when you have a product that kills 3 million people a year worldwide, is carcinogenic, and is associated with more than 200 disease and injury conditions in the human body, you need to do a lot of marketing.
Alcohol marketing is all around us, at our favourite sports matches, on our TV screens, online, at bus stops and on billboards. It affects what we think and how we drink, nudging us to drink more and during more occasions. But how does it reach us? Why are current regulatory structures failing to deal with a growing problem? Why does the World Health Organization recommend comprehensive bans on alcohol marketing, and what can be done to protect the most vulnerable in society from being bombarded by alcohol ads? Behind alcohol marketing's glamorous promotions lie a number of major concerns from health groups about the impact of alcohol marketing on children and vulnerable groups, as well as how marketing creates and sustains social norms that alcohol consumption is normal and desirable. For decades, evidence has demonstrated a link between alcohol marketing and young people's drinking.
Well, we have the most research on what the effects are on young people. And here the evidence is clear. We have numerous, at least 26 at last count, longitudinal studies that have followed groups of young people over time, looked at their drinking and their marketing exposure at baseline and at various points along the way. What these studies have all tended to find is that the more exposed kids are, the more likely they are to drink, or if already drinking, to drink more. And some of my public health colleagues applied what in public health, in epidemiology, is known as the Bradford Hill criteria for determining causality to this body of evidence. They concluded that this exposure to alcohol marketing actually has a causal role in young people's drinking. The other important thing that's happening is alcohol affects the brain. And it affects it most in certain ways when it is under development. So the general finding from the public health literature has been, in terms of young people and alcohol, we want to delay initiation as long as possible. Alcohol marketing has the opposite effect. The more exposed kids are, the more likely they are to initiate.
Although advertising codes prohibit targeting of minors, the ubiquity of alcohol advertising means that children can hardly miss it. A recent study found over 80% of 11 to 19-year-olds in the UK recalled exposure to alcohol marketing in the previous month, and those with more awareness of alcohol marketing were more likely to be higher risk drinkers. There is also evidence that underage drinking and the likelihood of alcohol problems in later life are closely related to positive expectations of benefits from alcohol use, precisely the expectations that marketing is designed to encourage. Product placement is particularly worrying with regards to targeting children, as exposure to alcohol use in films and TV is linked to higher risk of alcohol use and alcohol-related problems. Many reality TV shows, which are frequently watched by younger audiences, contain alcohol imagery. The growth in social media and digital marketing has led to a sea change in recent decades regarding how alcohol companies advertise, with growing concerns for public health. Alcohol companies have formed alliances with social media giants, blurring the lines between advertising and content. By 2011, alcohol producer Diageo had announced that its partnership with Facebook involved unprecedented levels of interaction and joint business planning. Concerns aren't limited to social media, with algorithmic marketing and retargeting presenting a real public health issue. This marketing technique presents advertising to digital users based on their interests, such as what they interact with, the words they type, and the content they sign up to. This is particularly concerning for people in recovery who could be served alcohol marketing after searching for phrases with the word alcohol in it. Public health groups and regulators are often many steps behind the alcohol and marketing industries, trying to play catch up with a fast evolving industry hidden behind targeted, individualized digital marketing. That is why a World Health Organization report in 2022 on cross-border marketing stated that there is a need for more effective regulation, especially due to young people and heavy drinkers being increasingly targeted by alcohol advertising. It has also been shown that alcohol marketing can be a trigger for relapse, with many people in recovery highlighting how it is impossible to avoid it.
So the cues that we see in alcohol marketing that make all of us feel like we want to drink or to think, oh, that looks nice and tasty, nice and cold, they are much more vulnerable to that, much more responsive to it. So we see that from neuroimaging studies, parts of the brain are stimulated in a different and more significant way in people who have had a drink problem or are currently experiencing a drink problem. But people who are in recovery tell us themselves about how much alcohol marketing influences them, particularly in the early stages of recovery. So people talk about the retail environment and how difficult it is even to get the bare essentials of shopping without being confronted with large and attractive displays of alcohol.
Alcohol marketing also has a clear intersection with perceived gender and gender norms. Women around the world are targeted through a range of strategies, such as the creation of products aimed at women, using lifestyle messages that reinforce gender stereotypes, offering feminine accessories, and using messages of empowerment.
Alcohol brands present alcohol to women as essential to the various social roles and contexts that they occupy in contemporary society. So, for example, alcohol use is presented as essential to female friendship and bonding, as a reward and a way to relax after a hard day parenting or a hard day in the office, as well as important to women's independence and sense of empowerment. Gender stereotypes are also used, and brands promote themselves through connotations of appearance, beauty, as well as slimness. And brands are increasingly promoted by focusing on the calorie content in a way that might promote diet culture. Now, in recent years, brands have begun to move beyond the gender binary of male and female to target a broader range of genders. And this is important as it's a way for them to stay relevant within a society and youth culture in which gender is regarded as much more than male and female, and increasingly they're targeting the LGBTQ+ community. Whether it be associations between alcohol use, beer and sports such as football, the pinking of products to appeal to more traditionally girly women, making associations between the consumption of brands and relieving the stresses of motherhood, or endorsing events such as Pride. Brands regularly use gendered connotations to try to appeal to and target the everyday lives and identities of consumers.
Marketing in the nighttime environment is often highly sexualized, using women's bodies and sexualities, for example, through photographs of female patrons. There are concerns that such content normalizes the objectification and sexualization of women, and as a result may impact on attitudes towards and treatment of women within society as a whole, for instance encouraging unwanted sexual attention, male entitlement to women's bodies, or even rape culture.
Now, whilst brands have moved away from objectification and sexualisation due to a fear of alienating female consumers, venues seem to have become particularly sexualised. For example, sexualised entertainment is now the norm, such as, the use of shot girls, the use of podium dancers. Now, this is all valid work, but it's essential that we ensure that women working in these roles are safe when at work. And research I've conducted found that many regard unwanted sexual attention from male customers as the norm. Speaking to women who frequent and participate in these type of venues, they suggested that sexualised marketing that objectifies and sexualises women actually impacts on how safe they feel in nightlife venues.
Sports sponsorship is another area of contention. Many high-profile sporting events broadcast in the UK are sponsored by alcohol brands. So in football, the FA Cup, World Cup and Champions League, in rugby, the World Cup and Six Nations, and in motor racing, Formula One.
There was a major sea change in alcohol in the mid-20th century in Western countries. Here in the US, the big change came when the tobacco company, Philip Morris, bought Miller Beer in the mid-1970s, and they brought everything they'd learned about marketing tobacco to the marketing of alcohol. Suddenly, alcohol marketing was everywhere. Prior to that, we didn't have alcohol being marketed in conjunction with practically every sporting event, but the story is that the head of Anheuser-Busch, August Busch III, took the book of 6,000 sporting events that happen in the US each year, threw it across the table at his marketing people and said, "Buy this."
High numbers of children will be exposed to alcohol sponsorship while watching these events. This has led to major medical and public health institutions in the UK calling for a ban on alcohol sports sponsorship. Bans are already in place in France and Norway, and in 2018 the Republic of Ireland introduced a law restricting alcohol advertising at sports events and sponsorship of driving or racing events. Marketers use the connection people have with sports and sports teams as a way to push their products.
So we're really emotionally invested in it, and that's what the marketers are taking advantage of, is that heightened emotional state, that kind of connection to our teams and our players, but also simply the level of exposure. I mean, there's barely a second of the match where it isn't visible. There's something for me that's particularly inappropriate about associating alcohol brands with elite sport, high achievement, healthy lifestyles, because implicit in that is the suggestion that alcohol is compatible with that kind of healthy lifestyle.
In terms of who is responsible for these harmful exposures, alcohol companies are some of the biggest marketing spenders across the globe.
When we talk about alcohol marketing, we usually go to the basic language of business and talk about the 4 Ps. What you're trying to do as a marketer is you're trying to get the right product in the right place at the right price, and then promote it in the right way for your target audience or audiences. According to Advertising Age, 6 alcohol companies are among the 100 largest marketers in the world. They spent a combined total of over $17 billion on marketing activities in 2019. And the function of this marketing is twofold. First of all, they are selling images, they're selling fantasies. But the second function of the marketing is these companies are really large, and in many markets they are monopolies or oligopolies. That is, there are very few of them, and as such, they can control a lot of what happens in the marketplace and extract oligopoly or monopoly level prices. This enables them to be more profitable than they would be otherwise, and the estimate is that they're the 8th most profitable industry in the world, more profitable than soda pop, slightly less profitable than tobacco. They're highly profitable, and that high marketing spend functions as what economists refer to as a barrier to entry. That is, it keeps other firms from being able to compete with them. If you think about it, Anheuser-Busch InBev is the largest beer producer in the world. Their cost of advertising per barrel of beer sold is going to be so much lower than every competitor's because they sell so many more barrels of beer.
Some within the alcohol and advertising industries argue that alcohol is a legal product and therefore it should be legal to advertise. They argue that bans are not justified, as advertising is concerned with promoting sales of individual brands.
One of the arguments in defense of alcohol marketing is that it's just about brand switching. It's really just educating people who are already drinking and helping them decide which brand to drink. Well, the first thing to realize about this industry is, like tobacco, every year they lose their best customers. They die from alcohol-related causes. They have to replace that customer base, and marketing plays a key role in the replacement of that customer base.
Alcohol marketing has also been framed as a human rights issue. A comprehensive report by Alcohol Focus Scotland stated that there is an inherent conflict between the commercial goals of businesses that sell unhealthy products such as alcohol and the protection of the health of individuals and society. Approaching alcohol harm from a human rights perspective means recognising that not only do people have a need to be protected from harmful alcohol marketing, but they also have a right, and that these rights are enshrined in international law. The report also highlights that countries often relinquish their responsibilities to the detriment of public health, for example by delegating the regulation of alcohol marketing to the alcohol industry.
Putting it bluntly, we've left the fox in charge of the hen house. Self-regulation means that those who make money out of alcohol marketing are the people who are supposedly regulating it, this system of and self-regulation, which, even as somebody in this field, I find endlessly complex and difficult to understand, never mind the public, for whom, it relies on a system of complaints. So how the public are meant to navigate that, I don't know. But fundamentally, this conflict of interest is at the heart of self-regulation. We were talking about human rights earlier and the obligation on states to protect and promote those rights. It's completely inappropriate for states to rely on the marketing industry or the producers themselves to design and implement a system to control alcohol marketing.
Alcohol marketing in the UK is subject to various controls that seek to prevent advertisers targeting and appealing to children. The controls are primarily administered by the Advertising Standards Authority and the alcohol industry-funded Portman Group.
It's noticeable that bodies who are involved in this system of self-regulation, notably the Advertising Standards Authority and the Portman Group, have been really out there trying to persuade decision makers that the system is fit for purpose and trying to defend the status quo, even though the evidence base in terms of public health harm from alcohol marketing has massively evolved over the last 10 years. What we see is very much tinkering around the edges and no fundamental shift to, or attempt to shift to, a regime that prevents exposure rather than regulating the content of adverts.
A report from Alcohol Change UK questioned whether the Portman Group's independent complaints panel process is fit for purpose, highlighting a lack of consistency and objectivity of decision making, as well as poor oversight and scrutiny of the panel. One vivid example was the Portman Group's consideration of the Diageo rum brand Captain Morgan. The Portman Group were looking at a complaint to assess whether the Captain Morgan character was a cartoon of a pirate and would therefore appeal to children. The group's panel concluded that Captain Morgan was not a pirate, a remarkable decision considering the brand's own website presented the story of Welsh pirate Henry Morgan, whose signature appears on some bottles. The Portman Group panel decided that the rum brand did not breach their code because of the lack of resemblance between Captain Morgan and an archetypal pirate with a wooden leg and an eye patch. Some have pointed out that even following the Portman Group's code, children are not protected from alcohol marketing. In their sponsorship code, the group states that prior to sponsoring an event, team or activity, drinks companies must use their reasonable endeavours to obtain data on the expected participants, audience or spectator profile to ensure that at least the aggregate of 75% are aged over 18. So even adhering to this standard, popular sporting events with audiences of 2 million people would be fined to sponsor with alcohol if 500,000 members of the audience were children. 25% also overrepresents under 18s, who only make up around 20% of the UK population. The recommendations to improve the system and reduce harm are clear. In 2017, the World Health Organization published their Best Buys of the most cost-effective recommended interventions to reduce harmful alcohol use. This included a recommendation to enact and enforce bans or comprehensive restrictions on exposure to alcohol advertising across multiple types of media.
It's really simple and basic in terms of what would be most effective for mitigating the effects of alcohol marketing. The answer is get rid of it. A total ban is clearly the most effective thing. Short of that, what you're dealing with is the marketing bubble, where if you push one part of that bubble with some kind of regulation, the industry will simply shift its spending to another area and the bubble will push out over there.
Alcohol Focus Scotland, which has been at the forefront of assessing alcohol marketing concerns, calls for the development of an international framework convention on alcohol control, within which a transnational approach to regulating digital alcohol marketing should be included.
It transcends national borders, so we need international regulation of digital marketing, and ideally we would have something like the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control that goes broader than marketing, but sets expectations around how alcohol is sold across the world.
Alcohol marketing promotes and creates an environment that normalises the consumption of alcohol. This establishes and reinforces expectations around alcohol use as being positive, aspirational, normal, and even as part of a healthy lifestyle. Although many other products are promoted in a similar way, few others kill over 3 million people across the world every year. Alcohol industry voices criticise the idea of marketing restrictions as being disproportionate and inhibiting consumers' ability to make informed choices. However, being constantly bombarded with alcohol marketing influences people's decision making, increasing their likelihood of drinking and of drinking particular products. This can therefore work to restrict and remove a person's choice rather than helping them choose. It also targets certain groups such as women and sexual and gender minorities and represents these groups in ways that can reinforce stereotypes. By taking action on alcohol marketing, governments can help reduce alcohol consumption and harm. This is in keeping with their obligations under international law to protect and promote people's right to health. For more information on this topic, check out the briefings on our website.